6:33. Well, I say it's 6:33. It isn't everywhere where people are watching and listening from. We've just had a message from Rochelle. She says, I'm watching from Jerusalem in Israel. No, she hasn't given us any name. Oh, she has Isabel. She says, you are no doubt the best programme on GB News, the perfect team. No one else comes close. Lovely to have Eamonn back, which is really kind. And I just want to quickly read you this one, which is from Thailand. I'm trying to find it now. Here we go. Good afternoon from Thani, Thailand. Udon Thani. Looking for an idea about a coronation disc. How about spare ribs? Although it might be hard to swallow. That's from John in Thailand. So they're all over the place.
There mustn't be much on the telly in Thailand. They're sitting watching us. But anyway, it's going to get even better. It's 6:34. Sexy time, as Isabel would say.
I'm going to live this down. Even Ruth just messaged me going, sexy time, question mark.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking about my own lingo.
Well, I'm getting it introduced into our vocabulary. And Chris Akabusi here this morning, always sexy time.
Oh, no, stop it.
Let's not go there. It's too early for that one.
And as for Dawn Neeson here...
Oh, yes. To be fair.
The best bits are even under the desk. Look at this. Look at this.
Wow.
Look at this. My goodness me.
Boots are made for walking and they'll walk all over you.
So the front page...
I've trained something.
Before these guys start bringing you the stories in the papers, here's what's leading the front pages. Telegraph, first of all, and this thing about the National Grid planning to pay some of you to switch off your electricity today. Don't believe it, can't see how it works, but anyway. And then The Guardian.
According to them, we are forecast to reach the government's £1 trillion export target 15 years late. They're blaming that on Brexit.
The Mail leads with the rise of what it calls something for nothing Britain, with over half of households getting more from the state than they actually pay in. Okay.
And here's the Mirror. It features the scandals facing top members of the Conservative Party, stating it's one rule for the Tories and another for the rest of us.
Yeah. And I would like to start that one with you, Dawn, front page of the Mirror. They still don't get it. And the Mirror have a point, I would have thought, here.
Very much so. It's a very toxic week for the Tories, isn't it? I mean, you've got Nadhim Zahawi and his tax bill, obviously not using a seatbelt, which was Rishi Sunak, and Boris Johnson, who needs a loan. So at the Mirror's front page, you've done it very cleverly. It's like, earn money, well, just pay your taxes. Using a car, wear a seatbelt. Need a loan, go to the bank. So it's been a disastrous week, isn't it? I mean, I would suggest that wearing a seatbelt is probably the least offensive thing at the moment. I mean, you know, as I think you've already discussed on here, we're all actually now, the self-employed, are filling our little income tax forms in and sweating over, have we put the right figure in the right column? And he just lost several £1 million of, like, where's that gone? It's in the wrong, yeah, we don't know how much exactly, but the rumour is it's £5 million, isn't it? And Nadhim Zahawi has supposedly paid a fine to Inland Revenue of around about £1 million. But it was an error, these things happen. And obviously, the Boris Johnson story, I can't get my head around right. So Boris Johnson, who was earning £160,000 a year pretty much as Prime Minister.
Yeah, what about what he earns as a Speaker?
And, yeah, and sort of like £250,000 for a speech, one speech, and has made millions since he left the office of Prime Minister, and he still needs a loan for £800,000. What is he spending it on?
Well, we know he's got an expensive wife, hasn't he?
And several children. Not quite sure how many children, but I mean, so it's the Mirror obviously is a very Labour supporting.
No, come on. I mean, but the evidence is there. The evidence is there.
No, I'm not.
So there's a guy. He gets 800,000 quid, and the guy that facilitates it ends up as the chairman of the BBC.
Chairman of the BBC.
You know, and as for Sunak, I mean, all that business. I know you're saying that's not important, but you know, you could be slapped with a fine if you or I were to do it.
Yes.
So and they're surrounded with advisors. Does no one see this?
Well, of the three things, I mean, we kind of know what Boris is like. I'm not surprised by that story. I think the BBC angle is a shock in all of it, and Rishi Sunak was a mistake. But to see Nadhim Zahawi, who was Chancellor of the Exchequer, hugely successful vaccine rollout he was responsible for, also set up YouGov, which has been a really great employer. But in his defence, he said that he actually gave all of his shares to his father, all of them. His whole 42% stake in the company gave all this. That's quite clearly and blatantly.
Well,
it may not be illegal, but he was obviously trying not to pay taxes.
It's a mistake.
How can he stay in politics?
It's a mistake. But honestly, Labour have demanded a probe amid the cronyism over the Boris Johnson and the BBC boss link and this £800,000 loan.
OK, talking about money, Chris, the story you want is the front page of the Mail, and they term it something for nothing Britain. Over half of households get more from the state than they pay in tax. So they're making a case for top earners here. This is in reverse to what the Mirror is saying. So they're saying top 10% of earners account for 53% of all income tax.
Yeah, but I suspect that the 90% that are not in the top 10% would quite happily exchange places. So yes, over half of the households get more from the state than they pay in tax, while 10% of the earners account for 53% of income tax. The challenge we've got here is that over the last sort of 20 years for sure, we've seen the growth of the state and the role it plays in our life. And so many people have witnessed through the global financial crisis how the banks got supported. And then they've gone into the latest experience in COVID, where you saw furloughs, help out to eat out, bounce back loans, quantitative easing.
But if this was under a socialist government, a lot of people would be wagging fingers and say, told you so. But this is conservative governments.
Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly my point, is that so if I am in the 90% that can't afford to bear the broader shoulders and bear, but of course I'm going to say, well, where's my cut? Where's my bit? You know, because I can't afford to eat, heat, look after granny, etc., etc., etc. So I think it's a bit of a non-story. You know, I'm very happy to be in the position to be able to
contribute.
Yeah, exactly right.
On this programme, we do discuss an awful lot about why, and just to involve another subject in all this, why illegal immigration is such a big problem here. And I do think that the impression is, certainly on the world stage, that we're very generous in terms of our benefits and in terms of, you know, this idea that we have more dependents than ever. If you come to this country, we'll look after you if you're, you know, really struggling. And sometimes we have to ask what that message is giving out.
Yeah. Look, there's a statement, wasn't it, from the World Economic Forum that you will own nothing and be happy. And my fear is this is where we're actually going to, a part where actually we've prepared a policy to expect something from the state, in fact expect all sustenance from the state, and just be happy with the little podge you've got and the little 5 minutes a day you can go out of your house. Okay. So, you know, this is where I think we are going.
The thing is, it's unsustainable, isn't it? You can't carry on having more being taken out of the state, which is basically all of us, than being put into it. It can't carry on like that. Something has to give.
Dawn, what are you going to be doing between 5 and 6 this afternoon? Are you going to be turning off your TV and pulling out your electric blanket?
According to Isabel, isn't that sexy time, or have I got
them? Stop it!
Well, you know,
so
the difference
Isabel,
between
lights
Isabel
out.
and me,
No, the kids will be home from school.
every hour of the day is sexy time with me. That's the difference.
Oh, God, sorry, Ruth.
Welcome
Thoughts
to my
and prayers. Because, yeah, this is the time. So this is, like you're confused by this story, Eamonn. The National Grid is going to pay households for not to... This is the important time, isn't it? It's that sort of like, you know, when you are actually making a cup of tea, you're doing tea for the kids, you're putting the heating on because it's blooming cold, and you're getting home from work. But the National Grid is going to pay you for not doing that. So, but you need a smart meter. If you've got a smart meter, that's how they're doing it. See, they're monitoring you. The state is watching you, Eamonn.
Yes.
Watching your kettle boiling.
Yes.
Be careful.
Yeah.
So they're going to pay you, you know, if they register your smart meter activity, and if it goes down, then you are going to get a few
So it's just a ploy to get you to sign up to
for a smart meter.
Yeah,
you saw it. You saw through that. Yeah, that's what they've done.
Do you know the idea that, we've got £1 million to distribute all around our 66 million customers? You know, what a lot of nonsense.
I know. If there is genuine concern about supply of energy and the possible blackouts and people, you know, actually going cold when they've got -5 outside, or it was as I came into work, why don't the government come out and say, guys, we actually need us all to take a personal position on this, and if you can avoid using power between 5 and 6, do it. Why do we have to give a financial incentive or snoop on people or make it all... Why don't we just say, guys, have a civic mind. Let's try and do this as a nation. Well, I would avoid using my power between 5 and 6 if I was told that might help.
I think people are avoiding doing it anyway because they can't afford it. But Mr. Akabusi might be remember this, but Chris, do you remember the 3-day week in the 70s? And we had in Northern Ireland the Ulster Worker Council strike, which went on for 6 weeks or so. I mean, I can remember being told off in school for having candle wax on my Latin homework, which I thought was quite appropriate. Yeah, because you had to do it by candle. You had to do it by candle, the power cuts.
Yeah, exactly. So when it was really, really obvious, because you had the power cuts, you did conserve your energy. I think at the moment it's not so obvious. Well, it is in your pay packet because it's costing you a lot more money. But you know, when I look at this this scheme here, I think I'm not a pensioner, but I'm a pensionable age, and yeah, okay, so I can afford to not use electricity or the gas between those hours. But what if you're a young mum and you've got your kids coming back? Yeah. They've got to have supper. They've got to get bathed, ready for bed. They've got to
they've got to watch
do their homework.
TV.
They've got to do their homework, etc. How do you say? But between this very sensitive hour, when you're just back from school, you're not going to use any electricity. I don't see how it works. I think the very people who are probably going to want to be incentivised can't afford to do it because they've got to look after their kids.
Again, it's going back to the previous story about the state micromanaging our lives again. As Isabel said, it's like, you know, you would do it as your civic duty. You know, if you thought you could do it, but obviously going back to your point, Chris, if you could do it, you would just do it in any case, like we did in the 70s.
Yeah.
Do you know, talking about civic duty,
Uh-oh.
I was out yesterday. No, I was out yesterday and I watched this man. This was around Leicester yesterday, and there were people out on the verges of the road picking up litter, and they put them in bags, and the bags were there, say every 100 metres or so there was a bag, and there were volunteers doing it. I've seen this a number of times, and I think the difference between them and me, I mean, I like the idea of it. Would I actually do it?
I picked up some litter yesterday.
Yeah.
I was in Kew Gardens and I saw a crisp packet on one of the lawns, and I went and got it.
Yeah.
But then...
So I do... Sorry,
I'm just saying people who have that sort of sense of civic duty, who will actually organise themselves and fill up a complete bag full of this stuff.
As well, don't you?
It depends on how connected you are to the local environment. So this is going to sound probably inappropriate, but when I'm on the golf course, I do. Yeah. So, you know, if I'm on a golf course and I see a pot, I'll pick it up, carry it in my bag and put it in the next place, because I'm proud of my golf course. It's Woburn Golf Course, by the way. I'm proud of my golf course, and I wouldn't want you to come down as a visitor and see a Mars wrapper floating in the pot. So it's because I'm connected to the golf course, and I'm very proud of my golf course. And of course, people are like that in their own local facility, I would like to think.
I just couldn't throw litter around no matter where I was. I just don't understand it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Talk about things we don't understand, Chris.
Yes.
Can we talk about why Boris Johnson's back in Kyiv?
Well, it's the Boris Johnson show.
He's not Prime Minister. He's talking about we'll continue to give support. That's not his role to say that.
If I was the Prime Minister, I would not be very happy at all. But I think this is a story that works both ways for Boris and for Zelensky as a PR thing. What Boris is showing is very relevant on the stage, and Zelensky is showing this person who has got a very big brand in Ukraine. He was the guy who led Europe a year ago, and showing that he's still involved, he's not left us. But one of the underlying tones here for me is the idea that there may be a jump from Boris to 2 years' time to Starmer, who obviously can't go out there, and that Sunak and Truss were a blip in history, because it's clear that Zelensky really rates having Boris on the PR stage. And for Boris, quite clearly, he can go and do more talks and show how powerful he is.
Hold on a minute, the timing here, right? 800 quid loan story's about to break. Oh, I'm going to Ukraine. Why would I be in Uxbridge, which is where his constituency actually is? Yeah. Let's go to Ukraine and sort of look good on the big stage rather than actually...
You terrible cynic, I love it.
I know. Beautiful.
Lovely. Dawn, Chris, see you again in about 45 minutes' time. Today.